Hi, I'm Scott. Welcome to Canard Boulevard, and I had something happen. So earlier this week, I flew down to New Philadephia, Ohio, and that is where ProAv Avionics is located. My airplane needed a pitot test done on it, a certification, so I went down there to get it done. It's about 70 miles south of here, so it's only about a 20-minute flight. I didn't bother putting the camera in it because, I mean, first off, it's not that interesting to see a 20-minute flight, I didn't think. Plus, it was really hazy out, so the visibility was crap, and there wasn't going to be much to see. So I didn't put the camera in because I thought, you know, nothing's going to happen anyway. Well, I was wrong. So it was a nice trip down there. I had to wait for weather because the airport was fogged in the morning, so I intended to leave at about 8 a.m. That got scrubbed. I ended up leaving at about 11:30. Got there, just after noon. The guys there at ProAv couldn't have been nicer. They took care of me. They knew exactly what to do. They were thrilled to see my airplane. Steve there has a delightful dog named Stella, who is just a sweetheart. They got free courtesy car there. They got food trucks. It's just a nice place. If you want to go check out KPHD, Kilo Papa Hotel Delta, it's a really nice little airport in the hilly mid portion of Ohio. Beautiful country. Anyway, so I got the pitot done, found one minor problem, got it fixed. On my way home. Now, when you're flying this airplane, you do need to adjust your elevator trim depending on speed. So if you're flying fast, you need to trim nose down because the lift generated by the two different wings is not the same. They don't develop lift in the same way. They're different airfoils. So at higher speeds, you need to trim nose down. When you slow down to come in and land, you need to trim nose up. No big deal. So I was flying home, had it trimmed out, everything's good, until I got close to my home airport here in Columbia. And then I slowed down and went to trim back, and I'm gonna trim back some more, and oh boy, it's not trimming back. Okay, now I'm slow and I've got about 20 or 30 pounds of pressure on the stick to hold the nose up. I'm like, this is not good. So I aborted that approach. I went out into the practice area. You can see here my track, to try and do a bit of problem solving and see what's going on. So I was checking breakers. I tried the co-pilot switch because the co-pilot has a trim switch as well, and neither of them working. I tried nose down, that definitely worked, and I didn't want to do that anymore, so it was only nose up that I wasn't able to do. So I thought, well, I'm in the air, I'm flying, I'm still able to control the airplane, no problem at all. I mean, I've got quite a bit of stick pressure, but I want to get on the ground, so I'm going back to the airport. So I came in and I did an approach and got into the pattern, got down on final, and I was just not comfortable with it. My speeds were not stabilized. I was kind of up and down and all over the place. I'm okay, scrubbing this one, let's go around, try again. So this time I gave myself a little bit more space to really get stabilized because I knew things were going to be different because I've got this pressure on the stick. And this airplane speeds up fast, so if you let the nose down a little bit, you speed up pretty quickly, and you can't do that, especially coming into this runway because I've only got 3,200 feet. So I need to keep my speeds right on the mark, but also keep the nose up. So I came in and on final, and everything looked good, and I'm getting close to the ground, and I let up the pressure just a bit, and it was just a bit too much, and I ended up bouncing and then got it down, braked, stopped, everything was fine. So that was exciting. not a huge problem, but it was exciting. So came in, parked it for the day, I'm good. Next, I have pulled apart the trim system and the electrics and had a look. Got the schematics, and I'm going to study some schematics and see if I can determine what the failure mode could be, possibly, or what their failure modes could be, plural. And once I've done that, I will bring you along and we'll get the thing fixed and working again. And hopefully you can see me fix this trim issue, because this is an issue that we actually discovered when we did the annual, but it happened once and then it went away, and we actually reseated connectors and so on, and it couldn't get it to happen again. So Now it's happening again. I got to get to the root cause and find it, fix it, get it working, so I can depend on it.
Later.
All right, it's 2 weeks later and things have not gone exactly as I would have hoped. I did find a cause of trim failure, but not the cause, or more correctly, all the different causes of the trim failing. So I opened up the relay system that drives the trim, both the nose and the aileron trim, as well as the speed brakes and the landing light. And I have the circuit diagrams that this relay system was built against. However, it didn't quite match up, so I wasn't entirely sure that the relay system was built exactly like the diagram, but that doesn't matter because the diagram was wrong. The way that the circuit was designed and shown in the diagram had the amperage from the trim motor directly running through the little Cooley switch on the control stick. Now that motor can pull up to 5 amps, and that little tiny Cooley hat switch is only rated for 1 amp. So what do you think is going to happen? Well, that's exactly what did happen. That switch burned out. So I got a new switch, and I did disassemble the old switch and had a look at the contacts, and sure enough, they are burnt. You can see here both the aileron and the elevator directions. The elevator much more burned than the ailerons because the elevator draws a lot more current. But they're both pitted and burned, and one of those, the nose up, had completely failed altogether. So I knew the switch was bad. I knew the switch was bad because the relays were allowing the current from the motor to go through the switch. I mean, the whole point behind a relay is that you have a small amperage switch, like on the Cooley hat, that can control a large current by doing it through a relay, but it kind of defeats the purpose when the current from the motor is traveling through the relay into the switch. So it was designed wrong. Whoever designed the circuit didn't know what they were doing. So I ripped all that circuitry out. I also found out that the landing brake circuit as well as the aileron circuit were all designed the same way. So I ripped out the elevator circuitry and I ripped out the landing brake circuitry. I have not yet done the aileron circuitry because the way it's done is with only one relay and I need 2 relays. So I've ordered another relay, and when that relay comes, I'm going to wire it in there and do that as well. I'm not too concerned about aileron trim. It doesn't draw a lot of current, and also I don't think I've ever used it. It's right in the middle and it never needs to get adjusted. Whereas the elevator trim, you got to use that all the time on this airplane. So I rewired the relays correctly. So now the Cooley hat switch on the sticks are actually just actuating the relay coils, and it draws a tiny amount of current. So these switches should more or less last forever. And the relays themselves are now powering the actuator, which is where all the current draw is. So it's all fixed, right? I did endless tests, up, down, up, down, up, down. Everything's working fine, can't get it to fail. I've got the problem fixed. And I took it up for a test flight to a nearby airport, which I did record. However, when I got back, the memory card in the camera was corrupt and it had erased all my videos. So once again, no flight videos for this one. But I got up. Trim was working fine, cruised over to the other airport. I was going to do some practice landings over there, slowed down, went to adjust the trim, and I had no trim again. So I landed there. Fortunately, the elevator trim where it stopped working was in a good place, so I was able to land with no issue whatsoever. I taxied in, shut down. I checked the circuitry, and when I was actuating the switch, I could hear the relays working and actuating properly. I opened up the relay compartment. I could see the correct relays actuating, but the actuator was not moving. So yes, I had a problem with the switch. However, it looks like I also have a problem with the actuator because that's the only thing left. I've replaced everything else. I've replaced the switch, the wiring from the switch to the relays, the wiring from the relays to the actuator. The only thing left is the actuator itself because everything else has been replaced. Not only that, I tested the wires at the actuator as I operated the switch and I could see voltage there. So I know it's the actuator. So I ordered a new actuator and this just arrived today. I'm going to put it in. I have tested it at home just to make sure it works properly. I will take out the old one. I'll make sure double check that the stroke and everything is exactly the same. It should be. It's the same exact model from the same manufacturer. And we'll get that in give it another test, and hopefully that will be the end of this story, other than the aileron trim. Now the landing brake, I did change the relay circuitry there as well, because again, they had the full current from that landing brake actuator running through these tiny little toggle switches on the control stick. No bueno. So that's fixed and that should be fine. And of course, it's rained almost every day for a week, so I couldn't have gone really flying anyway, so I've taken the time to do some other work. I did pull out a whole lot of antenna wire. I was having comm issues. Oh great, this is falling onto the floor. So I was having some comm issues where my signal getting out was weak and garbled. I was getting reports back, and that was on both radios. And I was also having issues hearing other aircraft in the pattern. So I thought, let me find out what's going on with that. And I had tested it with this temporary homemade dipole here. You can see it's just a dipole made of copper foil with the correct length with some RG58 coax on it and a BNC on the end. So I plugged this into the radios, and it was working fine. So I knew the radios were all right. And I got I got this bag of tricks here. This is my radio bag, and what's in this is a vector network analyzer, which is this little device here that there is no way I'm going to attempt to describe what this does, but it measures impedance and capacitance, and you can detect if a cable is bad. You can also measure how efficient an antenna is. You can measure SWR. Basically, anything you need to do on an antenna over a wide bandwidth, it will tell you. So I can tell it to sweep all the different aviation frequencies, and it'll tell me how the antenna will perform at those different frequencies. There's two antennas, one in the left vertical stabilizer and one in the right. However, only the left one was connected. So when I tested using a spectrum analyzer and a signal meter, I was getting about minus 19 to minus 26 decibels, which is pretty horrendous and would explain why nobody could hear me. So what I did is I spent the weekend, a very, very hot weekend, ripping out all that antenna cable from the left wing all the way up, and also the antenna cable on the right wing had been abandoned halfway through, so I fixed that. I put all new connectors on, ran new high quality coax all the way up and all up into the radios, and then when I tested the antennas, instead of minus 19 and minus 26, I was getting more like minus 1.7 and minus 0.9, which is fabulous. That means the antennas are working perfectly. And that means that should be my comm problem solved. I'll obviously won't know for 100% sure until I go out and actually fly it and talk to people, but the instrumentation doesn't lie. That should be the end of my comm issues. So I've got the comm done. I have pulled the cowl off because I was cleaning spark plugs, and I figured I'll just do an inspection while I'm at it. So, and as soon as I had the plugs out, I get the borescope out and scope the cylinders, even though it was done not too long ago at annual, but can't hurt. So I had a look, everything looks good. And that's about it. So now I've got to pull the old actuator out, put the new actuator in, give it a test, and I guess that's close to being done. I got to put the cowls back on, and if this rain ever stops, seriously, I think this is day 8 of rain every single day. They will be able to repave my apron, because right now it's all dug up to get repaved. They can't do it if it's raining because the ground is soft. And then we'll see if we can get up and go flying again someday if the weather ever cooperates. So let's get to work. All right, so there's the new one installed. If I master on, accessory on, you can see now is moving the trim in and out, as you would expect. And the elevator is moving as you would expect. Nose down, nose up, working perfectly. And it does sound better, so I do think this old one had some issues. I did do a couple of changes. One is that when I put in the connectors, I made them polarity sensitive, male and female, so that it's impossible to hook this thing up backwards. That would be bad. The other thing this thing has, it has a variable resistor output, so that it will tell you, you can actually read the resistance. This is two endpoints and a common wiper for a potentiometer, and it will tell you the position of the actuator. This one has it as well, but as you can see, the wires were never actually hooked up to anything. But because it has that capability, I put connectors on the end, and I'm going to wire that next time I have the Canard off and I have access to all the wiring in the back here. I'm going to actually wire it into the G3X because this has the capability of reading the position of that elevator trim, so that when I adjust elevator trim, it will actually show up in the G3X what my elevator trim setting is. For aileron trim, I do have a little indicator down here that shows me where it's actually at. But I don't have anything for the elevator trim. It's just kind of do it by feel. The one thing that's a little disappointing is that the old one had a single wire coming out the back, and that contained the actuator as well as a position sensor. And this one has two wires coming out. This one is the actuator and this one's the position sensor, and so that means it's kind of intruding a little bit on the co-pilot's legroom side, but I'll tie that over a bit so it's not too bad. I will actually wire that up. I've got a few things I want to hook up to the G3X. The other one is the gear. The gear position, you can actually wire that in the G3X, and that way if you are at a low altitude and you reduce power and your gear is up, it'll start flashing and warning you to prevent you from doing something stupid. And the last thing is the fuel back here. That's my fuel indicator back there. And the G3X also has the ability to read directly capacitive sensors. So I'm going to put a set of fuel senders into the fuel cells back there, right along the edge there, and I'll pull wire up to the G3X, and so that I can have my fuel quantities up on the screen here. Basically, I can look back there and try to get a look at where my fuel levels are. Honestly, I hardly do that. I do it as you know, as I'm paranoid to check it, but primarily I'm just running off time and fuel flows, and the G3X has a fuel totalizer in it as well. But it would be nice to have an actual fuel level sensor in there. All right, so I'm gonna wrap this up, hook up this wiring, or like tie it up and make it nice and neat, and we'll call this job done. All right, that's it. Trim is done, not tested. I mean, it tests fine on the ground, but it did before. But that said, everything that can be replaced in the trim system has now been replaced, so there's nothing left for it to fail, really, unless something new fails. But the trim should be good, and as soon as it stops raining and I get my apron into the hangar repaved and I can get the airplane out of my hangar, hopefully by this weekend, we'll take it up flying, give it a test, and just make sure that everything is working as we expect. That's where we'll leave it for this episode. I hope that was of at least some interest to somebody. Again, I know, sorry, no flying. My camera didn't work. I honestly did. I thought, okay, I need to put the camera in because people are complaining when I put a video out that has no actual flying in it. Camera was in there. When I got down and took the camera out and it said memory card corrupt, please reformat. And I'm like, ah. So I lost all that footage. Sorry about that. Next time for sure, flight footage. When we test the pitch trim, we will test it and get some flight footage and make sure that everything is working peachy keen. All right, any questions, comments, suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below. I am learning just as much as anyone, and so if there are experts out there that know more than me, and there's going to be lots of people out there who know more than me, please, I really appreciate when I get suggestions and comments, and even if it's something that I already know, I appreciate people who do leave comments and just to help me out, because it's a great community. Please like, subscribe if you haven't already, and hey, share this video around if you think anybody might be interested in it in any way. I will put a link to the actuator, the Philadephia actuator that I put in here, just in case anybody is coming across the same problem and wants to put that same actuator in their Canard. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching.